pleasant day to each one of us. We are the fourth group and we are here to present you all our virtual reporting. So now let me introduce to you the members of the group 4. And that is Miss Angeline Echano, Miss Faith Herrera, Miss Lotis Margate, Miss Leia Grace Anakan, Miss Ana Del Seguid, Miss Casey Yacon, Miss Norvelyn Sab, Miss Wichelle Marquez, Miss Abigail Sibugan, and yours truly, Helena May Candido. At this juncture, I will now present you the conceptual framework of our report. So, the first topic will be Art Nouveau to be reported by yours truly, together with Miss Angeline Echano. Next is the Fauvism by Miss Herrera and Miss Margate. Next to that is Cubism by Miss Anakan and Miss Sagid. Futurism to be discussed by Miss Yacon and Miss Sab. And lastly, the abstract topic to be discussed by Miss Marquez and Miss Abigail Sibugan. So keep calm, listen, and let's take a tour with these various art topics. So, let us start. Once again, a very good day everyone. I am Helena May Candido, your first reporter, and I am to discuss the first topic assigned to us, which is the Art Nouveau. To begin with, let us know the objectives for this topic. First, we have to define what is an Art Nouveau. Second is to know the characteristics of this art style, to explore the various architects and their famous architectures, and lastly, the other examples of Art Nouveau. Let us explore Art Nouveau. Art Nouveau is an ornamental style of art that flourished between about 1890 and 1914 throughout Europe and the United States. It is also a deliberate attempt to create a new style free of the imitative tourism that dominated much of 19th century art and design. Art Nouveau developed first in England and soon spread to the European continent. It is an international style of art, architecture, and applied art, especially the decorative arts, and it is known as New Style or New Art. This can be called in various names in different countries, such as in Netherlands as Nieuwe Kunst, in Germany as Jugendstil, Arte Joven in Spain, Secession in Austria, and Stile Liberty in Italy. One of the famous artists whose art gallery and exhibition hall that gave its name to the famous artistic style, Art Nouveau, is Siegfried Bee. He was a German naturalized French in 1876 and was the founder in 1895 Maison d'Art Nouveau in Paris. Art Nouveau was aimed at modernizing design, seeking to escape the eclectic historical styles that have previously been popular. The movement was committed to abolishing the traditional hierarchy of the arts, which viewed so-called liberal arts such as painting and sculpture as superior to craft-based decorative arts. The practitioners of Art Nouveau sought to revive good workmanship, raise the status of crafts, and produce genuinely modern designs. Here are the inspirations for this type of art. First, the arts and crafts, and the other one, Japanese art and its descriptions. So this also includes the whip splash curves, which typically employ intricate curvilinear patterns of sinuous symmetrical lines often based on platforms. Alright, so in order for us to distinguish an Art Nouveau, here are some of the characteristics that characterize it. It is moved away from imitation of real subjects and moved towards flowing and twisting lines of nature. It is inspired by the lines and shapes of nature. United flowing, natural forms with one more with more angular contours. Art Nouveau designers also believe that the arts should work in harmony to create a total work of art. It was a short-lived movement whose brief incandescence was a precursor of modernism, which emphasized function over form and the elimination of superfluous ornament. The Art Nouveau embraced all forms of art and design in architecture, furniture, glassware, graphic design, jewelry, painting, pottery, metalwork, and textile. First, let us all talk about Art Nouveau in architecture. In the architecture, buildings gave many of these features in Art Nouveau, just like the use of asymmetrical shapes, extensive use of arcs and curved forms, curved glass, curving, plant-like embellishments, mosaics, stained glass, and Japanese motifs. So now, let us all explore the various famous architects and their architectures around the world. First on the list is a French artist and art historian, Pierre Francastel, that divides Art Nouveau into two main tendencies that could broadly termed as the organic and the rationalist. So, as we can see here in these images, the examples of the rationalist and organic tendency. A good example for the rational is the Mackintosh School in Glasgow, Scotland, that is dependent on the straight line, and an example of the organic tendency is the House of Gaudi House in Barcelona, Spain, that gives precedence to the curved line and floral shapes. Another art historian is Stephen Madsen, proposed a more subtle classification but still relies on an assumed antagonism between four designs. In reference to his book entitled Sources of Art Nouveau, he had described four styles, and first to that is that an abstract, structural style with a strong symbolic and dynamic tendency. It is more found in structures of buildings in France and Belgium, and an example to that is the Henry van de Velde house. Second is that a floral approach focusing on organic plant forms in Gale, Majorelle, and Valin. An example to that is the Aquarium Pavilion. Third is the linear, flat approach with heavy symbolic element, which can be more found mostly in Glasgow School of Art by Charles Rene Mackintosh. And lastly, it was cited in his book that a structured geometric style in Austria and Germany in the picture as an example called Majolika House in Vienna by Otto Wagner. According to Victor Horta, a Belgian architect and designer who designed the Hotel Texel in Brussels, Belgium, that was constructed on the years 1893 to 1894 and was considered as the first Art Nouveau building in the world. As we go on details inside a famous hotel, we can see here in the picture the stairway of Texel House that incorporates the have been characterized. Another creation of Victor Horta, called as Hotel van het Velde, started in the year 1998 and was constructed in 1989 and in the year 1900s. As we go deeper in this hotel, we can see in the fireplace area another architecture in Brussels, Belgium, called Hotel Solvay in 1898 and was completed in 1990s. Next to that is the A Castle Beranger in Paris, France. Paris Metro entrance that is also seen in Paris, dated 1899 to 1905. Another architect named Louis Sullivan, an American architect who was known as the father of skyscrapers and modernism, and was one of the recognized trinity of American architecture. One of his creations is the Wainwright Building in Missouri, USA. It was built on the year 1890 to 1891 with a height of 44.8981 meters or 147 feet, a 10-story building that incorporates the Art Nouveau. Charles Rene Mackintosh, a Scottish architect, designer, watercolorist, and artist. His famous building design is the Lighthouse in Glasgow, Scotland, the Casa Batlló in Barcelona, Spain, the La Sagrada Familia, and the Parque Güell are some of the famous designs of Antoni Gaudí, a Catalan architect from Spain known as the greatest exponent of Catalan modernism. Gaudí's work have a highly individualized, sui generis style. Although Art Nouveau had many followers and patrons, few reached the fame and distinction of Antoni Gaudí. In the mid-1800s, Gaudí came to represent Barcelona's interpretation of Art Nouveau modernism. In the furniture arts, Henry van de Velde, a Belgian painter, architect, interior designer, and an art theorist, together with Victor Horta and Paul Honker, he is considered one of the founders of Art Nouveau in Belgium. He worked in Paris with Samuel Ving, the founder of the first gallery of Art Nouveau in Paris. He was very influential in the birth of Belgian Art Nouveau style. In 1896, he presents his furniture works in Samuel Ving's gallery, L'Art Nouveau in Paris, and became internationally known. Let us all take a look with his furniture works with these pictures show. Henry van de Velde designed a vast range of items such as architecture works and whole interior decorations, furniture, ceramics, decorations, glassware, pottery, and jewelry. In here, we can see the scream painting. The scream is the popular name given to a composition created by Norwegian expressionist artist Edvard Munch in 1893. Beginning at this time, Munch included Art Nouveau elements in many pictures but usually only in a limited or modified way. Here, however, in depicting his own morbid experience, he has let go and allowed the foreground figure to become distorted by the subjective flow of nature. In the field of graphic arts, an example to that is the artwork called Moulin Rouge. Moulin Rouge, La Gaule is a poster by French artists Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, and other examples as depicted here is the horse in motion and other graphic arts or posters. The fall of Art Nouveau and birth of Art Deco. When Art Nouveau fell out of fashion in the 1920s and 1930s, it was replaced by the clean, simple geometries of Art Deco. The extravagant curves of Art Nouveau were seen as old-fashioned and viewed with contempt. Many Art Nouveau products were put away, spurned, and destroyed. Rooms once decorated in what have been the highest height of fashion were redecorated to conform to the latest taste. The transition from one architectural style to another has always been a gradual process and has been influenced by social, cultural, and economic scenarios. The architecture itself is a reaction to various aspects like forms of art, prevailing social conditions, and economy due to various political implications. The Art Nouveau style, embracing the new industrial European aesthetics and blending naturalistic and stylized forms in combination with more geometric shapes, particularly arcs, parabolas, and semicircles. Being exquisitely decorative, their style was incorporated in architecture, graphic art, interior design, jewelry, furniture, textiles, household, silver and other utensils, and lighting, as well as the fine arts. According to the philosophy of style, art was meant to be a way of life, and Art Nouveau, at its pinnacle, lived up to this. And that would be all for my part. Thank you so much for listening. I am now passing the floor to the next reporter, Miss Angelina Chana, to dig deeper with this topic.
So hello everyone, I am Angeline Ichano and I will continue the discussion of Helena Candido about Art Nouveau, but it is about the sinuous and flowing lines. So the contents of it is first introduction, architectural features, elements, Casa Batlló, Casa Mila, the Park Güell, and Horta Museum. So it is an international philosophy and style of art, architecture, applied art that were most popular during 1890 to 1910. The most important places for architecture during this period were Brazil's Paris and Barcelona. The name Art Nouveau is French for new art. The most important architects were Antoni Gaudí and Domenici Montaner. It represents the beginning of modernism in design or more modern architecture. It occurred at a time when mass-produced consumers' goods began to fill the marketplace and designers, architects, and artists began to understand that the handcrafted work of centuries past could be lost. Time and place. Flourished in major European cities between 1890 to 1910, emerged in the early 1890s in all visual arts, painting, sculptures, architecture, interior designs, graphic arts, posters, jewelry, clothing, and furniture. Art Nouveau was underlined by a particular way of thinking about modern society and new production methods attempting to redefine the meaning and nature of work of art so that art would not overlook any everyday object. Art Nouveau architecture features. Art Nouveau buildings have these features. First, asymmetrical shapes. Second, extensive use of arches and curved forms. Third, curved glass. Fourth, curving plant-like embellishments. Fifth, mosaic. Sixth, stained glass. So the material used is stained glass, rough iron, mosaic tiles, lime mortar, wallpapers, and glazed stucco. Flat decorative patterns, intertwine or twist organic forms such as stems or flowers, the use of new materials, and the rejection of earlier styles. Art Nouveau is characterized by organic, especially floral and other plant-inspired motifs, as well as highly stylized flowing curvilinear forms. So Art Nouveau elements. First is flowing lines, characterized by a graceful, sinuous, or curved lines. The lines are rarely angular. Second is violent curves. Some artists refer to the curves in Art Nouveau works as whiplash or a quick blow delivered with a whip. So these curvy lines connect the images in the art and can even be found in beautified plain items such as furnitures and buildings. So in architecture hyperbolas and parabolas in windows, arches and doors are common, and decorative buildings grow into plant-derived forms. Art Nouveau designers selected and modernized some of the more abstract elements of Rococo style such as flame and shell textures. So, Casa Batlló, Casa Mila, Park Güell, and Horta Museum. First, let's talk about the Casa Batlló, restored by Antoni Gaudí. Casa Batlló is a six-story apartment building in Barcelona, Spain. Beautiful example of organic architecture. It does have a visceral skeletal organic quality. So Art Nouveau elements in the building. The outer wall has mosaic of colored pieces of glass, tracery or decoration consisting of an open pattern of interlacing ribs, irregular oval windows, flowing sculptures, sculpted stonework, attic, having animal-like shape with a legendary story depicted. So the goal of the designer was to avoid straight lines completely. Much of the facade is decorated with a mosaic made of broken ceramic tiles that starts in shades of golden orange, moving into greenish blues. The roof is arched and was likened to the back of the dragon or dinosaur. Roof architecture of Casa Batlló. So this is an interior view of Casa Batlló. Let's talk about Casa Mila rather. Apartment block built between 1906 to 1910 in Barcelona. Commonly known as La Pedrera, is the largest housing building in Barcelona. The facade is an impressive wave-like mass of rough shaped stone. The building does not use load-bearing walls but rests on pillars and arches. So Art Nouveau elements in the building. Curved forms on the balconies, the windows and doors seem to be dug out of this stone mass and are trimmed in exquisitely crafted wrought iron work. No use of straight line, use of sculptures and decoration. Next is the Park Güell. Park Güell is a garden complex with architectural elements situated in Spain, designed by the architect Antoni Gaudí. Built in the years 1900 to 1914, Antoni Gaudí used beautiful mosaic decoration in this park. Structures were of natural forms with columns like tree trunks. So Art Nouveau elements in the building. Use of different colored textures, use of mosaic animal sculptures, organic features used in the terrace walls, different unique bending shapes. Next is Horta Museum. The location is Belgium. Construction is 1898 to 1900. The museum is actually the house that Horta designed and built for himself. This is the only place left you can see of his style features of the building. Use of curved form, curved glass facade of the museum. Horta has left the load-bearing columns exposed, making them become a decorative feature. This was a common trait in Art Nouveau, making structural features appear ornamental. Horta has echoed the curves in the balustrading with the curved stairs, tiled mosaic floor, and painted wall designs. Again, this is the way Art Nouveau designers work, creating a uniformity in the interior. The use of large areas of glass and the linear iron supports allows for a delicate, almost transparent approach. So the interior of the museum, curved railings, spiral staircase, the curve in the balustrade, and tiles mosaic floor, arches, curved glasswork on walls. That's all for Art Nouveau. Thank you.
Have a blessed day to each and every one. I am Lotus K. Margate together with Sir Faith Alexis. We are assigned to discuss about Fauvism.
What is Fauvism? Fauvism is an art movement that was established towards the beginning of the 20th century, characterized by its bold colors, textured brushwork, and non-naturalistic depictions. The Fauvist style marked a seminal moment in the early 20th century.
Fauvism is an art movement and style that was established towards the beginning of the 20th century, pioneered by the likes of Henri Matisse and André Derain. In its early years, Fauvism was predominantly affiliated with French artist Fauvist art is characterized by its bold colors, textured brushwork, and non-naturalistic depictions. In some ways, Fauvist artists emerge as an extension of the Impressionist artists working at the turn of this century, linked by the way they paint directly from nature. Fauvists are sometimes associated with post-impressionism. However, unlike the Impressionists, the Fauvists paid particular attention to capturing emotion in their subjects, often painting portraits, landscapes, and nudes. The Fauvists enhanced the colors and tones of the natural world, thus closely observing scientific color theories that had been developed in the previous century. Fauvism combined so many of the art movements that preceded it, borrowing everything from German Impressionism to Neo Impressionism. The history of Fauvism.
The term Fauvism translates to mean wild beast and was coined by critic Louis Vaxels following the 1905 Salon de Tamis exhibition. The exhibition, which was held in Paris, caused widespread outrage. Such vibrant and unnatural colors shocked the public and critics alike, as Fauvism soon earned its place as one of the first avant-garde art movements of the 20th century.
The figure most commonly associated with Fauvism is none other than Henri Matisse. Taking influence from Paul Gauguin, Van Gogh, and Georges Seurat, Henri Matisse moved art that one step closer to abstraction. This groundbreaking modernist movement did away with the stillness of the subject matter, instead instilling color with the movement and brushwork with energy. The most famous Fauvist pieces of art are predominantly by Henri Matisse. Works such as Bernard de Febvre and Dance have endured as iconic and instantly recognizable paintings. Combining a mystical and euphoric subject matter with a distinct flatness and an enhanced palette, these works continue to influence the course of contemporary art.
One of Fauvism's major contributions to modern art was its radical goal of separating color from its descriptive, representational purpose and allowing it to exist on the canvas as an independent element. Color could project a mood and establish as a structure within the work of art without having to be true to the natural world. Another Fauvism's central artistic concerns was the overall balance of the composition. The Fauvists simplified forms and saturated colors drew attention to the inherent flatness of the canvas or paper. Within that pictorial space, each element played a specific role. The immediate visual impression of the work is to be strong and unified. Above all, Fauvism valued individual expression. The artist's direct experience of his subjects, his emotional response to nature, and his intuition were all more important than academic theory or elevated subject matter. All elements of painting were employed in service of this goal. That's all for my part. Now I'll pass the floor to Miss Serrera.
Hello and good day to everyone. This is Faith Alexis Bicerera, and this was the continuation of the report of Miss Lotiski Magate regarding with the art, style, and movement called Fauvism. Well, my key takeaway number one is that Fauvism was much similar to Post-Impressionism and Neoclassicism. So, by comparing both of the artwork styles and their paintings, I could definitely say that they are much similar because they are such works like regarding with the nature, landscapes, and portraits with such unique and ubiquitous subjects. Well, I could wonder what is Fauvism inspired by. So Fauvism was inspired by post-impressionist artists such as Vincent van Gogh, Paul Cézanne, and Paul Gauguin. So the thick paint application of Fauvism with bold hues and expressive nature of Post-Impressionism were exemplified and emphasized by the Fauvist paintings. My key takeaway number 2. Fauvism art looks much modern and technically advanced. Compared to the common artwork styles, I could definitely think of the Fauvism art that was an art style that was born in the nearly 20th century, so it means it's much modern, much skilled, and there could be an instance that the Fauvism has something to do with technically advanced styles of artwork, paintings, and landscapes. My takeaway number 3. Fauvism definitely existed because of its unique way of color handling and was categorized by bold and strong emotions needed to be expressed. So definitely that's why from my own perspective, the Fauvism was born after Expressionism. It's because of the strong emotions and bold interpretations of the paintings and artworks that Fauvism implies to its viewers. So definitely, as to say that not all people is into Fauvism artwork, and not also all people would definitely love and appreciate this type of artwork. So as to say that the contrasting colors used that were bold and much alive could simply determine and tickle our minds pertaining to how lively and how strong an artwork could be. So right now, allow me to share some of my artworks that I've attempted using the Fauvism art style. So these are my recent paintings with poster colors and paper with Fauvism art style. With contrasting heavy colors which I harmonized all together to create unity, I am starting to love and to create more regarding with the deepness of shade and darkness of colors. I definitely just tried out onto color choices that would appear nicely for the outputs, yet I thought I just made them both fine. I created an entry for both landscape and portrait, and somehow hoped that I just started the Fauvist spirit in me. So that's everything, guys, and I hope you learned something with my presentation of Fauvism art style. Thank you so much, and
First, let us define Cubism. So Cubism was a revolutionary new approach to representing reality invented in around 1907 to 1908 by artists Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque. They brought different views of subjects, usually objects or figures, together in the same picture, resulting in paintings that appear fragmented and abstracted. Cubism was one of the most influential styles of the 20th century. It is generally agreed to have begun around 1907 when Picasso's celebrated painting De Montsalles d'Avignon, which included elements of Cubist style. The name Cubism seems to have derived from the comment made by the critic Louis Baxulas, who, on seeing some of Georges Braque's painting exhibited in Paris in 1908, described them as reducing everything to geometric outlines to cubes. So Cubism opened up almost infinite new possibilities for the treatment of visual reality in art, and was the starting point for many later abstract styles, including constructivism and neoplasticism. By breaking objects and figures down into distinct areas or planes, the artists aimed to show different viewpoints at the same time and within the same space, so suggest their three-dimensional form. In doing so, they also emphasized the two-dimensional flatness of the canvas instead of creating the illusion of depth. This marked a revolutionary break with the European tradition of creating the illusion of real space from the fixed viewpoint using devices such as linear perspective, which had dominated representation from the Renaissance onwards. So Cubism can be seen to have developed into distinct phases. the initial and more austere analytical cubism, and a later phase of cubism known as synthetic cubism. So analytical cubism run from 1908 to 12. Its artworks look more severe and made up an interweaving of planes and lines, muted tones of blacks, grays, and ochre. So in an attempt to classify the revolutionary experiments made by Pablo Picasso, George Braque, and Juan Gris when they were exponents of Cubism, historians have tended to divide Cubism into two stages. The early phase, generally considered to run from 1908 to 12, is called Analytical Cubism, and the second is called Synthetic Cubism. It is termed Analytical Cubism because of its structured dissection of the subject, viewpoint by viewpoint, resulting in a fragmentary image of multiple viewpoints and overlapping planes. Other distinguished features of Analytical Cubisms were a simplified palette of colors. Also, the viewer was not distracted from the structure of the form and the density of the image at the center of the canvas. So, when we say synthetic cubism, it is the later phase of cubism, generally considered to date from about 1912 to 1914 and characterized by simpler shapes and brighter colors. So synthetic cubist works also often include collage real elements such as newspaper. The inclusion of the real object directly in art was the start of one of the most important ideas in the modern art. So synthetic cubists began when the artists started adding textures and patterns to their paintings, experimenting with collage using newspaper, print, and pattern paper. So analytical cubism was about breaking down an object viewpoint by viewpoint into a fragmentary image, whereas the synthetic cubist was about flattening out the image and sweeping away the last traces of allusion to three-dimensional space. So the example of synthetic cubism is, of course, Picasso's paper coulis. So that would be all. I am passing now the floor to Ms. Leah Grace Anakan to continue the discussion. Thank you and have a great day.
Good everyone, I am Leah Grace A. Anakan, and today we will continue to discuss the movement and influence of Cubism. First, Cubism is considered the first abstract art movement created by Pablo Picasso and George Braque. Although Seurat, Cezanne, and many others had been moving toward abstraction since the late 1800s, Cubism is considered the first movement aimed at explicit attempts to abstract the subject matter of paintings. It began in 1907, was popular during the early part of the 20th century, and had its origin in France and Spain. Cubism was a specific scientific approach involving a limited color palette, forms reduced to geometric shapes, limited shading to flatten the surface, and the presentation of subject matter from multiple simultaneous perspectives. So the results were intentionally unavoidably abstract. This confident, intentional alteration of visual information influenced every other abstract art movement to come. Second, it employs geometric shapes in depictions of human and other forms. Over time, the geometric touches grew so intense that they sometimes overtook the represented forms, creating a more pure level of visual abstraction. Cubism was a very abstract, heavy painting movement, and its meaning is still debated by painting historians today. Some people believe it was an attempt to represent the chaotic nature of modern art life, while others argue that it was simply an exploration of new artistic possibilities. Third, Cubism inspired related movements such as sculpture, literature, and architecture. Though the movement's most potent era was in the early 20th century, the ideas and techniques of Cubism influenced many creative disciplines and continue to inform experimental work. Cubism in its various forms inspired related movements in literature, sculpture, and architecture. Of course, Cubism is far from being a remnant of art history. Its legacy continued to inspire the work of many contemporary artists, drawing upon the stylistic and theoretic elements of the movement and continuing to influence the art that we know and love today. Next, Cubism was highly influenced by Impressionism and Fauvism. Cubism was influenced by the two most popular art movements of the time, Impressionism and Fauvism. Impressionism focused on capturing realistic scenes in truthful styles, while Fauvism favored bright, bold colors and expressive brush strokes. Cubists believed that these styles could be combined to create a new type of painting that was more abstract and expressive. Cubism is characterized by its geometric shapes, distorted perspective, and bright colors. Picasso and Braque often used simple shapes like squares, circles, and triangles to create their paintings. They also liked to experiment with different textures and materials such as sandpaper or newsprint. Cubism, on the other hand, influenced many other styles of modern art including Orphism, Futurism, Vorticism, Suprematism, Constructivism, and Expressionism. Cubism continues to inspire the work of many contemporary artists which still use the stylistic and theoretical features of this style. Although Cubism was born in France, it immigrates across Europe and integrated with the artistic consciousness of several countries. This movement emerged as Futurism in Italy, Vorticism in England, Suprematism and Constructivism in Russia, and Expressionism in Germany. And it also influenced several of the major design and architectural styles of the 20th century, and it still prevails to this day as a mode of expression in the art language. What's unique about Cubism? The Cubist style emphasized the picture plane's flat, two-dimensional surface, rejecting traditional techniques such as perspective, foreshortening, modeling, and chiaroscuro or shade, as well as time-honored theories that art should imitate nature. And that's all.
Hello everyone, I am Norvilin Sab. So me and Miss Casey Yacon are assigned to report about Futurism. But before that, let us know our learning objectives. First is determine what is Futurism. Next is identify the artists and artworks of Futurism. Lastly, know the characteristic of Futurism. So what is Futurism? Futurism is an avant-garde art and social movement that originated in Italy. Decade document for the development of Futurism is the Manifesto of Futurism, which was published by Filippo Tommaso Marinetti in 1909. Several manifestos were created in the wake of Futurist philosophy. All these manifestos had a common attitude toward the past based on uncompromising rejection, while glorified the cult of youth, industrialization, speed, technology, and modernization, often emphasizing the violent component of the struggle for cultural and wider social change. Futurism developed in literature as well as in painting, sculpture, architecture, industrial design, music, film, dance, and fashion. Here are the history of Futurism. So, Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, an Italian poet, founded the Futurist movement in Milan in 1909. He was soon joined by painters Umberto Boccioni, Carlo Carra, Giacomo Balla, and Gino Severini, who would define the visual poetics of Futurism in later years. The Technical Manifesto of Futurist Painting was first published in 1910 in Milan. This document introduced the philosophy of Futurism into the medium of painting by developing the concept of universal dynamism. In addition to Boccioni, the manifesto was signed by Carlo Carra, Giacomo Balla, Luigi Russolo, and Gino Severini. In the domain of formal aspects of painting, the Futurist painters relied on the experience of Post-Impressionists and Cubists. The Post-Impressionist method, divisionism for the Futurist painters, was crucial. The basis of the divisionist painting's creation can be summed up into two procedures. The first is the application of pure or unmixed color pigment on the canvas, and the second is the confrontation of the desired pairs of complementary colors in order to achieve maximum brightness. Secondly, the analytical principles of Cubist painting. The fragmentation of scenes enable the realization of the desired dynamics within the painting. Next is the characteristic of Futurism. So, the characteristic of Futurism including the rejection of traditional value frameworks in the field of culture, striving for art freed from the weight of its past, highlighting youth as a key capital of social development, as well as a fascination with technology, modernization of urban spaces, and the dynamism of industrial plants. So that's all for my part, and Miss Yakon will continue the report about the Futurism artists and artworks. That's all. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Casey Yakon and I want to apologize in advance for my voice because I have cold and cough. So let's continue the topic about Futurism. Futurism artists. The most notable Futurism artists include: first is Umberto Bacchini. Umberto Bacchini was a painter and sculptor, as well as a leading theorist of the Futurist movement. Bacchini studied at Accademia di Belle Arti in Rome. In addition to the Manifesto of Futurist Painters, Bacchini published Futurist Painting and Sculpture Plastic Dynamics in 1914, which formed the basis for understanding Futurist visual poetics. His work can be found in Peggy Guggenheim Collection in Venice, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and Metropolitan Museum of Artwork in New York. Second is Giacomo Balla. Giacomo Balla was a painter, psychiatrist, poetics, and designer. Balla introduced the technique of diffusionism into Futurist painting by influencing Umberto Bacchini and Gino Severini. His painting is characterized by study of movement and light. Balla's work are displayed in the Albright Knox Art Gallery in New York, the Peggy Guggenheim Collection in Venice, and the Historic Collection of the Modern Italian Art in London. Third is Carlo Carra. Carlo Carra is one of the leading figures of Italian Futurism. He studied at the Brera Academy in Milan and was one of the signatories of the Manifesto of Futurist Painters. He later developed metaphysical painting with Goya di Chirico. His works are in collection of the Galleria Nazionale di Arte Moderna in Rome, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Pinacoteca di Brera in Milan. Also, this a full list of Futurism artists can be found below. You can take a screenshot guys if you want. So let's proceed to the Futurism artwork. The first artwork is The Street Enters the House, or La Strada Entra nella Casa. It's an oil on the canvas painting by Italian artist Umberto Bacchini, painted in the Futurist style. The work centers on a woman on the balcony in the front of a busy street, with the sound of the activity below portrayed as a riot of shape and colors. Second artwork is Ascending Forms, or Ascending Forces, painted Gigardo Dottori in oil on canvas in 1930. This painting is currently in the Civic Museum of Palazzo della Pena in Bulgaria. Third artwork is Dynamics of a Dancer by Gino Severini, 1912. Dinamismo di una danzatrice ballerina di Chahot. Oil on canvas, 60 x 45 cm. Jacker Collection, Pinacoteca di Brera, Milan. The fourth artwork is Unique Forms of Continuity by Umberto Bacchini, in Space 1913, Cannes 1950. The Futurist celebration of the fast-paced and mechanical power of the modern world is emphasized here in the sculpture dynamics and energy. Lastly is Antonio Santaleya train station and airplanes 1914. I did not put everything on my report, but this a largest list of photos, painting, and artwork is shows below. And that's all about my report. I pass the floor to next reporter. Thank you and have a
A pleasant day, everyone. I am Abigail Sibugan, and the topic that I will be discussing today is about abstract art. So, abstract art is an art that does not represent an accurate depiction of visual reality, communicating instead through lines, shape, colors, forms, and gestural marks. So, abstract artists use a variety of techniques to create their works, mixing traditional means with more experimental ideas. So, the word abstract art is from Latin word meaning pulled away or detached. And it is the basic idea is of something detached from physical or concrete reality. So it is frequently used of ideas meaning that they don't have a clear applicability to real life and of art meaning that it doesn't pictorially represent reality. So abstract art is not objective art, which does not have an accurate representation of visual reality but uses forms, colors, textures, and gesture marks to achieve its effect. So when you think of an art, you might think of a painting of a person like Mona Lisa, a painting of a landscape, or a sculpture of a person. So abstract art doesn't depict actual object or physical location. It is more closely resembles a collection of colors, lines, and shapes used to represent objects or emotion. The purpose of abstraction in art is not to tell story, but to encourage involvement and imagination. This art form has its main objective to provide viewers with an intangible and emotional experience being completely different for each individual depending on their personality and mood. So it is to let the viewer interpreting the meaning. So just like what I have said earlier, artists paint shapes, colors, and forms to achieve its effect. According to Tate, abstract art is not representational. It could be based on a subject or may have no source at all in the external world. A viewer will maybe think it is a total accidental mess of a paint, and for someone else, it will have an impact that strikes her or him. Now let's go to the example of abstract art. First is we have Convergence. So Convergence is a painting produced in 1952 by American artist Jackson Pollock. It is one of the initial earlier works of abstract expressionism and considered as one of the bravest action paintings ever made. The painting is a collection of views spluttered in a canvas resulted in shapes and lines. The splendid hues assault the eye at first sight like dark, orange, red, yellow, and white. It likewise appears as though there is a white creepy painted in the upper right corner of the composition spluttered accidentally. There are circles, swirls, lines, and spots spluttered all through the canvas, uncovering his feelings of insubordinate nature. The colors represented in his artwork represented rebellious nature, but Pollock believed that it was the viewer, and not the artist, who defines and interprets the meaning of an abstract expressionist artwork. Thus, there is no relevance on what artist thinks or conveys while producing the work. Next is we have Composition 7. So, Composition 7 is an abstract oil painting executed in 1913 by Vasily Kandinsky, a Russian-born painter. Art historians have concluded that the work is a combination of the themes of resurrections, Judgment Day, the Flood, and the Garden of Eden. This art is considered one of the greatest masterpieces of abstract art. Composition 7 can rightly be described as an orchestration or symphony of form and color. The painting is a multicolored work that is designed to appeal to the senses and evoke an emotional response. The painting exists as an object of visual and emotional appeal and does not need to be interpreted. And the third and the last is interchange. It is also known as interchange. It is an abstract expressionist oil painting on canvas by Dutch-American painter Willem de Kooning in 1904 to 1997. Like Jackson Pollock, de Kooning was one of the early artists of the abstract expressionism movement, the first American modern art movement. The piece combines the use of light and color to create a dynamic and compelling piece of art. While de Kooning did not necessarily create a classic artwork, the painting is still very interesting. This oil painting was the first abstract landscape by de Kooning. It was the first abstract landscape to be painted by the artist. And that's all for my part. Now I am giving the floor to Miss Marquez to discuss the history and styles of abstract art.
Pleasant day to all of you. I am Sweet Chocolate Marquez, and today I am going to discuss about the history of abstract art. Abstract art was born at the beginning of the 20th century. At this time, the artistic landscape was predominantly made up of Cubism, Fauvism, and figurative expressionism. Abstract art is also called non-objective or non-representational art, painting, sculpture, or graphic art, in which the portrayal of things from the visible world plays a little or no part. All art consists of largely of elements that can be called abstract. These elements such as elements of form, color, line, tone, and texture. Prior to the 20th century, these abstract elements were employed by artists to describe, illustrate, or reproduce the world of nature and of human civilization, and also the exposition dominated over expressive function. Artists such as Robert Delaunay, Wassily Kandinsky, Kazimir Malevich, and Vladimir Tatlin turned to fundamentally abstract art. Kandinsky was traditionally regarded as having been the first modern artist to paint purely abstract pictures containing no recognizable objects in 1910 to 1911. The narrative, however, was later questioned, especially in the 21st century, with a renewed interest in Swedish artist Hilma af Klint. She painted her first abstract work in 1906, but with a different goal than achieving pure abstraction. Now, let us talk about the types of abstract art. First is the abstract expressionism. So, it is the term applied to the new forms of abstract art developed by American painters such as Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, and Willem de Kooning in the 1940s and 1950s. It is often characterized by gestural brush strokes. In here, you can see the image or example of abstract expressionism. Color field. So it is a style of abstract painting that emerged in New York City during 1940s and 1950s. It was inspired by European modernism and closely related to abstract expressionism. It is characterized by large areas of color, typically without strong tonal contrast or a defined point of focus. In here, you can see an example of color field painting. Impressionism. So it is developed in France in the 19th century and is based on the practice of painting out of doors and spontaneously on the spot rather than in a studio from sketches. It is also characterized of style including small, visible brush strokes that offer the bare impression of form, unblended color, and an emphasis on the accurate depiction of natural light. This is an example of Impressionism or Impressionism art. Fauvism was the first and the avant-garde movements that flourished in France in the early years of 20th century and was also known for bold, vibrant, almost acidic colors used in an unusual juxtaposition and an intuitive, highly gestural application of paint. Here is an example of a Fauvism painting. Futurism. It is an artistic movement originated in Italy and to a lesser extent in other countries in the early 20th century. It also emphasizes dynamism, speed, technology, youth, violence, and objects such as cars, airplanes, and industrial cities. Here is an example of Futurism painting. Lyrical abstraction. It is either of two related but distinct trends in post-war modernist painting. The European abstraction, Lyrici, was born in Paris. And here is an example of lyrical abstraction. Geometric abstraction is the use of simple, geometric forms in non-Euclidean space, that is basically to say, shapes on a flat surface. It is informed by Cubism. The world rendered in geometric abstraction is composed of entirely geometry. And here is an example of geometric abstraction. Hard edge painting. It is a painting in which abrupt transition are found between color areas. It is also related to geometric abstraction, op art, post painting, abstraction, and color field painting. And this is an example of hard edge painting. Formalism. It is often known as art informel. It is an art movement that developed in 1940s and 50s alongside other post-war movements. Informalism abandoned geometric abstraction for something that was more informal and intuitive. Art informal is often studied alongside movements such as lyrical abstraction, matter painting, and touchisme. And here is an example of informalism or art informal painting. Post-painterly abstraction is a term created by art critic Clement Greenberg as the title for an exhibit he curated for the Los Angeles Country Museum in 1964. It is characterized as a linear design, bright in color, lacking in detail and incident, and open composition. And here is an example of post-painterly abstraction. Optical art. It is a popular branch of geometric abstraction. Op art creates optical illusion, a major development in the 60s with the likes of Bridget Riley playing around with color theory and psychology to create mind-bending works. And here is an example of op art or optical art. Action painting. Action painting is closely related to abstract expressionism, some considering it a tendency within the larger umbrella of ABEX. It refers to works that are created by dripping, pouring, or splashing painting directly onto the surface. And here is an example of action painting. Cubism. So the name Cubism comes from the art critic Louis van Vauxelles, who remarked on the work of Braque being composed of cubes. In Cubism, objects, people, ideas are analyzed and broken down into cube-like forms that reflects the basic composition of notion that defines them. Cubism influenced many styles such as constructivism, futurism, and suprematism. In fact, Cubism remains influential to this day, as this infamous Cubist form are seen on anything from digital art to sculpture. And here is an example of Cubism. And that would be all for my report. Thank you.